let's make this famous big diagram using SketchUp, V-Ray and Photoshop. So to get us started, what I've done is I've downloaded a set of silhouette people from 3D Warehouse. That then gets us going with a sense of scale. Then I'm just creating a little base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to iron some of these context buildings and the sort of surrounding landscape. So with the context now modelled, let's just add some basic colours. You can see it's a very limey type green, so we're gonna go for that. Maybe just it's a bit more yellow, isn't it? Something like that I'll do it. And these are just very simple diagrams to emphasize a concept. I know Big's obviously famous for the progression ones as well, but the principles of creating this diagram do apply to that as well. You've just got to obviously come up with your own processes, little arrows here and there, and all that sort of stuff. I would encourage you to model all that in a similar way to how we're doing this. Just trying to match like for like where the bits of green are. Okay, and then now it's a case of let's there we go. Just make sure we've got the same red on them all. And then it's a case of just quite randomly just dotting them about. And obviously we want to keep all these people in the one group because it makes it easier to edit and turn off and all that sort of stuff. So it's a case of just spreading these about. Okay, so with the people roughly distributed, we then want to finish off with just adding obviously a bit more information to our building here. So let's carve the hole in it first. And then let's just do some simple just little moves at the corners. This isn't a terrible way of getting a bit of an architectural form quickly as well. So that'll do us. I'm not too bothered about it being exactly the same. And then to get those lines cutting through. We want to just make a rectangle as a group. Give that bottom one a bit more height. And then just do something like 3 meters. Where are we? Intersect with selection. And there we are. And then same the other way. Looks like it wants to be. Let's do 5 meters. Like that. Doesn't need to be too precise. We're only doing a diagram. But these cuts will just add a little bit of detail to the building. Just that little bit more information. I've noticed that on the lower level there, they've not got those cuts, so let's just do a little bit of clean up. I don't mind them in what will be that like kind of courtyard. I'll just take them off the roof and then we're good to go. Okay, so all that's dealt with. Let's just let that creep into the bridge. You get a sense that there's a bit of additional access around the side there, which does look quite nice. You might find there's a few people a little bit lower than they should be, but should get away with it. Okay, and then it's a case of just popping a few of these on the roof. That seems to be what's going on here, although I hope they end up designing a bit of edge protection in. Okay, so we've got our model sorted. That didn't take long at all. Now what we want to do is set a view, parallel projection, isometric. Maybe just zoom in a touch. You don't really want anything in the horizon. So that'll do. Animation, add scene. Let's maybe just extend that out. Right, okay. I'll just open Photoshop in the background a sec. Now, the key here is to export a few different scenes so that we can, we've got the maximum amount of flexibility for implementing line work, and then we'll use V-Ray to just give us that little bit of shadowing. It won't look exactly like this, but it'll look very good. We also want to pop in, let me just pin that. We also want to put the people on their own layer as well, because on here the people haven't got edges on them, so we want to export that separately. Where are we? God, they've called it tags now, haven't they? Annoyingly. People, and then you just go in entity info, people, and then you can turn them off. So we want to make sure that we're matching the view every time. That's obviously why we save it as a scene. And let's make sure we've got a decent resolution as well. And I do like to drop the line scale multiplier to 0.6. Just gives you a bit more of a subtle line work. Okay, so we'll just call this one main model. And that'll do most of the work. Then let's make a new layer and just call it everything else. There we go. And then let's turn the edges off. Where are we? Styles. Export. People. Then we want to turn everything back on like that. And then let's do a nice, now this is something different. It isn't in the diagram. But I'm going to do shadows. Look at that. Look at the impact that has. So I'm going to export that as well. Sorry, just with all the colours turned off. Styles. Background wants to be pure white. There we are. Then with Photoshop open, the background on that. Let me just redo the people. There we go. Again, pure white background, just so you can use the blending modes in Photoshop. So I can now drop that on. If I hold Shift, it snaps in place. And then if I change the blending mode to multiply, they're then in place. Same with shadows. I then do multiply. That's the point of having a pure white background. On the shadows, I would do something really subtle, something like that. Okay, so that's a little starting point. We're not quite there yet. What I'm thinking of doing is another export with just profiles, and that looks nice. Let me turn the people off. Drop that in, and again hold Shift and drag. Let's just use the main model. Now, I don't know whether the resolution's hitting us a little bit here because the lines aren't as chunky. What that hasn't done as well is give us, there we go. Again, let's just make sure it's pure white. It was changing the colours because I didn't have it to hidden line. So let me just, so profiles, update, drop that on, hold it again, hold shift. There we go. See, that's nice. Look at the chunky line work on the edges. Okay, so we're getting there. Now, the thing that jumps out at me as well is these little softer shadows around the edges. So what I want to do is I just want to create a very simple visual with a bit of studio lighting, just so it's soft. So see the way it's got too harsh of a shadow there. So let's just up the render output. So what we want to do, we want to drop a little dome light in, open the Cosmos browser, HDRI, and then we want to use a really subtle, so I think that one looks good, Studio HDRI. We then import that in, copy it, find your dome light, paste it in there. Then you turn the sunlight off, transform on, so it follows the actual rotation. I'm hoping that won't make too much of a difference. Let's just have another scene, just so we've got one with people, one without. Okay, well that's clearly too dark. So let's just drop the exposure value, but that increases the exposure of the image. There we go. And then you can see that we're getting that little bit of variation in the blocks, that difference in, you know, like the softer shadows. And by fluke, I've kind of matched the direction of the sun as well, which works. So then what we do is we will then drop this in behind. So leave it with me. I just need to make a few tweaks. I need to just turn these into V-Ray materials. Before I do that, I'll just show you how to do that. So you very simply just select and then just do edit in V-Ray. So just leave it with me a sec. Let me just get the setup right, and then I'll send that to render in the exact same view, exact same aspect ratio. I'll probably drop the resolution now to 3000 along the wide edge. And then I'll get a render that matches that, and then I'll drop that in, see on the other side. We're back in Photoshop. We've got our nice white card render. We want to drop that in. And that is near enough in the right location. You can get a little hint of what we're working with there. Let's just drop that to the very bottom. And we want to make that multiply as well. I think there's a slight scale issue. Let me just... Yeah, that's done this trick, I think. It's not perfect, there's still a few little blips, but it'll do. And then what we want to do is, with this bottom layer selected, the V-Ray render, we just want to lift the brightness so the shadowing is quite subtle. You could go the other way if you want to, but for me it's about subtlety. And you can see the way it's just giving you that little bit of shadowing. Maybe just drop it a touch. Now, the difference we seem to have here as well is the line work is, it's a lot stronger, isn't it? So just to be a little bit of a perfectionist with this, I want to turn the profiles off like so, and then I'm going to do an export. I'm going to call it line work, and I'm actually going to go the other way with line scale multiplier. I'm going to do 1.5. I think it's the resolution. I think we've gone a bit too high with the resolution, so the line work's gone a bit too faint. So I'm hoping now that we've got a bit of a chunkier should just be 50% yet. Let's just throw that on the top and hit multiply. Now I think that's better, but we still want it to be a touch brighter as well, don't we? But that's the line work dealt with. I'm going to just do it Control Alt Shift and E, and it gives us a bit of a master merge, but preserves all the others. I think I'm just going to brighten it, and then you can use like the burn tool to just add a little bit more shadowing where you want it. See where there's a bit more under the bridge that I've just captured there, a bit more around there. So just use the burn tool to just emphasize a bit more shadowing, but I just wanted to get it just a little bit whiter generally. Okay, that's not too bad. As I say, I did say at the start of the video, we're not going to get an exact match, but it's not a million miles away. I'm quite happy with it, and it's a good, definitely a good thing to use in both study and practice for sure. We've just got our little, just noticed, it's exported our little dome light. Let's just get rid of that. And then one thing to finish it off, nice big chunky outline. So using the pen tool, we're going to create a path around the building. We've got a few stray people there. If I was you, I'd sort that for your projects. And then, so with that layer selected, make sure the brush is black, and then nice and chunky. Right click, stroke path, make sure it's brush. And there we are. Not a bad result in that time frame. So I hope that's been useful. hope you can apply this technique to your next project, and stay tuned for the next one. Cheers.